Today we're going to talk about some of the new equipment potentially entering the game soon. First up is going to be the tank mech, I believe called Berserker. And it looks like it's definitely going to have some type of shield. I think, in fact, somebody took apart the APK files and did confirm that it had some type of dome shield ability. Now this could go one of several ways, being that it either has a destructible dome shield, which is not really going to protect you from mortars, or it's going to be an indestructible dome shield, which could potentially cause problems. Now, there are ways to balance it in either scenario, giving it like a large amount of HP, or making it only active for like maybe 4 seconds or something like that. I have no idea what the ability cooldown or duration is going to be like, so that's all speculation, and I'm not necessarily going to assume anything, but I will try to cover as many different possible scenarios as possible. Now, the way I see it, the big question is, does it have a durability or not? I think in either case, it'll almost definitely have a duration maximum of probably 10 seconds. But the durability question is definitely one of the most important. And I don't think it'll be like stasis barrier where it'll apply stasis. People are all talking about like, well, what's the secondary, effect of the shield? I don't think it's going to have an effect to anything. I don't think it's going to make your bullets stronger while you're shooting outside of the shield or going to apply stasis to anybody walking inside the shield. I think it's either just going to be a straight-up dome shield with a durability or a straight-up dome shield without a durability. Because the dome shield itself is unique to this mech. Multiple charges are possible, something like Cheetah, where you can lay down multiple shields and or potentially stack them. This is only probable if the shield does have some type of durability, so that you could either stack the shields or once one goes down, you immediately replace it with another that, maybe it goes down quickly from 1 or 2 mortar shots, but it would be replaceable with the ability to use multiple charges or place them in strategic locations. I think regardless of what the specifics of this ability are, the mech is going to be very immobile, regardless of the speed. Its ability insists that it stay in a specific spot, and it encourages yourself and teammates to not move, which means that in CPC games, you're going to be relatively ineffective, but you're going to be very effective in 5v5s. Tournaments are going to be, a lot different with this mech around. But, again, there are mechs that are like that. Some mechs are really good with control point capture. Some mechs are just better with 5v5s. And that's just the way that it is. Same with weapons. So I think, regardless, I don't really believe that this is going to be like a totally game-changing super meta mech. I think that a lot of people are going to have it, and they're going to use it purely to counter the amount of mortars that are currently being used. If mortars weren't a problem, I don't think this would be a top pick mech. That said, it could be. It would be a very good beacon protector, or just like a zone control type ability, the type of thing that Arachnos is supposed to have but doesn't. And yeah, so I think there's a lot of potential for it to be very good as a tank, and there aren't very many great tanks, because the ability to soak up damage in this game is super important, but there's just so much available damage, especially due to pilots, that tanks don't last long either. They maybe take 2 salvos instead of 1 when it comes to certain weapons. Like, sometimes you don't even feel the difference when you're shooting at a tank versus something else. Like, that's how brittle they are. But I would like to see something that's a bit more survivable, but not necessarily totally OP. I can assume that it's going to have a maximum of 12 energy. I've seen the size of this carrying, I think, like shotgun 8s. I don't have a picture of it, but I saw a picture of it. And it looks like it's relatively the same size as Juggernaut. The mech itself reminds me a lot of Bulwark from War Robots, and my first impression of it was that it was going to have a bubble shield, not like Juggernauts, more like Ares, where it's like out in front of it, but all around it, like a full bubble fully encasing it. And it's going to, and I would assume it would be like completely indestructible, probably for like 4 to 5 seconds, and then it would go away. But since it is something that this mech lays down and then, you know, can walk away from after that, if you so desire, there's definitely going to be a duration. And I'm still assuming it's going to be an indestructible shield. That's my assumption, but don't take my word for it. Like, don't start freaking out or telling me how OP or terrible that would be. Like, that's just my assumption. Because it does look a lot like Bulwark from War Robots. If you're not familiar with it, it has a special Aegis shield that is impenetrable by all weapons, because in that game, energy weapons can penetrate energy shields. But that specific shield blocks all weapons. So I think in order to make it similar to that, blocking all weapons would just mean a duration and no durability. It's just indestructible, like Panther stasis barrier. Bleh. What else? I think in terms of this mech, I'm excited for it. I love my tanks. There aren't a lot of variety in terms of tanks. Brickhouse is garbage, and if you're saving up for Brickhouse, which a lot of people are, please don't. It costs like 1,000,000 credits. That's half of what you need to max something out. So like, just save it for something else. Don't get Brickhouse. It's bad. And Ares is just the tank meta, but even that, it goes down quickly to a lot of these weapons. Juggernaut, there's ways of using it well, and I've been considering trying to use it more often. Now that I'm, continuing my non-meta approach to this game. That's okay. Will this Berserker, or whatever it's going to be called, will this be a meta tank? Quite possibly, but I think every tank still has its place. They still have their specific roles, so I'm not too worried about that. So yeah, that's about all I have to say about that, because, again, we don't know the specifics about it, but I think in either scenario, for the big question that I would have anyway, I think there's really no easy way that they would make it completely overpowered. So, yeah. And I'm also assuming, obviously this isn't something I know, but I think logically the dome shield is going to have a radius of 15 meters, which is what the surge, what is it called? What is surge ability called? Storm Dash, that's right. The Storm Dash, the effect, EMP effect at the end of the Storm Dash, that's what Surge has. It's 15-meter radius. I think that would be a good radius, because 30, way too large. 20 would be a good number, but like, they already have a 15, so like, why even bother making a new radius number if they just take off Surge? Seems like it would be bad. 30 is way too big, though, and not necessarily makes it doesn't necessarily make it OP, but like, if it was 30 meters large, wide, and that's radius, so like, it would be 60 meters, like, from one end to the other. That's like, that's so large that enemies could just walk inside of it and kill you, and the shield would do basically nothing in most maps. So like that would actually make this mech really, really bad. So I think they're gonna confine it to like 15 meters, which is 30 meters across, and you could definitely fit all 5 mechs from your team, as long as they're not all brick house or something. But like you could definitely fit all 5 mechs from your team inside that bubble, with a little bit of wiggling. It's definitely possible to do that. So I think that would be a good radius for it to have, and that's what I'm expecting it to have. All right. So in terms of Railgun 12 or Railgun 24, which is what we're assuming it's going to be, it could be a 20 or a 26 or a 30 or something crazy like that. You don't know. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's going to be a 24. In terms of Railgun 12, I think in general, with the buff that Long Arm 12 got, Railgun 12 is not going to be that useful. Now, Railgun does still have its uses. Like I made the video about Long Arm 12 versus Railgun 16, and the Railgun definitely does a lot more damage per shot, and it suits its preferred, its optimal playstyle and environment better than the Long Arm would, because they have their own specific optimal environments. I think that since the Long Arm 12 just got so much of a buff, though, the Railgun 12 would probably seem relatively weak. It'll still probably do more per shot, and it will definitely do better at closer ranges, anything under 75 meters, which is where Long Arm starts to drop its damage because of the damage buildup. So you're still going to do better there in terms of that. So if that's the sort of playstyle that you have, or that's just the kind of maps that you normally get, like sniping is not always easy. Like keeping enemies 75 meters or further is not always something that happens, and it does kind of depend on the map. So there is a place for Railgun 12, for sure. I don't think it'll be completely swallowed up by Long Arm 12, but it will feel pretty weak, I feel like. In terms of Railgun 24, whatever energy that may be, there are 2 different reasons as to why this could exist. One being that Railgun 16 used to be just, a one-of-a-kind weapon that you couldn't fit 2 of on a single mech, and maybe they want to go back to that. That's how it was when I started. I know that I heard that at one point Railgun had 3 variants when the game was newer, and they got rid of 2 of the variants because they were too strong. But I wasn't there for that. But maybe they want it so that regardless of what mech you're using, you can only fit one railgun. Well, one of that specific railgun. They want a super, premium weapon that you can only fit one of on a mech, and then everything else, can do whatever. Or they plan on adding higher energy capacities to mechs in the future, which is definitely possible. I don't think that they would add this to a regular mech. I don't think that they will just slowly increase the energy capacity of all mechs and, 2-3 years from now, we're going to be running like 60 energy setups. I don't think that's going to happen ever. What I do think is going to happen, though, is that they will add some sort of Titan mech like War Robots has. And that will be something that has just massive amounts of energy. It's going to be very, very slow, like probably 10 kph. It'll be large, so it can't fit through certain areas. And and it'll be very, very tanky. That is something that I honestly have to say that I would enjoy to see. Like, there's a giant speed meta in this game, so, like, Titans, you could easily outsmart them, outrun them, just outskill them in general. So I'm not really worried about Titans absolutely, some Titan type mech absolutely breaking this game, because the speed meta is just it's so important. So genuinely speaking, I would actually like to see something like that. If you don't want to see something like that, feel free to let me know why, or your reasoning as to why, it could potentially be a bad thing. But once again, that's just one of two possible scenarios that I see the reason for a Railgun 24 or whatever actually being in the game, assuming, that's a legitimate thing that's coming and not just something that somebody made up or grabbed from a long time ago. Autocannon 8 cannot come soon enough for me. I want it. The autocannons that exist, 2 and 4, are absolute garbage, and we really need a more variety in our assault weapons. Currently, the only decent option is carbine, and I don't like those weapons. I feel like they're weak, and part of the reason is because, like, the damage that you deal is dealt over a much longer period of time than just about any other weapon. So assault weapons are almost never used. People use disc launchers with an assault weapon playstyle because they work much better as assault weapons than they do than the carbines do. And that kind of sucks to me. Like, assault weapons should be for, like, close to mid-range brawlers. Instead, you got arc torrent and, like, shotgun and disc launcher being used for that, and the assault weapons are all just thrown into the trash. With the exception of carbine 12, which is the only kind of usable one. Carbines 8 and 10, even if you're, a little bit newer, like your squad power isn't that high, I would just skip those and just go straight for the 12, and that's it. It costs like 7,500 A coins anyway, and I think the other two cost basically the same amount. And that's so pricey. That is so much that it's not worth ever spending that more than once. You may as well just go for the 12, try to duplicate that and put that on, whatever attacker mech or something, even a medium mech if you max it out. And that just have that as, like, your end goal. But just use one until you get there. Like, it's not worth getting the other two. In terms of autocannon 8, it's still going to be an 8 energy weapon, so it's really only going to fit early game attackers, mid game medium mechs, and then late game it's only going to be decent for light mechs. And even then, it's a lot of sustained damage. It's a lot of damage that you're dealing over a pretty good period of time, which means that you're going to have to be exposed for that period of time. In terms of that, I feel like the only usable mech for that would probably be Shadow. Even then, disc launchers ruin Shadows very, very quickly. So, will autocannon 8 make much of a turnout in terms of late game? Probably not. Do I want it? Definitely, because RPG and autocannon are two of my favorite weapons in the game, and they just don't have decent energy variants. Speaking of RPG, the Voltaic RPG, or VRPG, the 8 version just came out. I think we're expecting a 12 and a 16. Currently, the VRPG 8 is super, super weak. I've tried it. I've seen other people try it. Even at near max level, it doesn't seem to be doing very well. I definitely expect a buff. Like, this is almost a guaranteed thing. I expect a buff pretty soon, of at least 25% like they did. And I'm really, really hoping that they give it to all of the VRPGs, not just the strongest one like they've been doing. That said, the 12 and 16, they should be able to pack a punch. Will the 12 be better than a missile rack 12? No, the missile racks deal so much damage, and that's just their perk. They're supposed to deal tons of damage, but you have no choice but to unload all of your ammo. After that, you gotta reload. At least for these, if you play with a specific playstyle like I do, I hate missile racks so much because for one thing, I can't aim them very well. The projectile speed is low. These VRPGs, the projectile speed is kind of low, but it's faster than missile rack, and I do like that. They have a maximum range of 90 meters, which is terrible, especially since they're supposed to be anti-sniper weapons. When you're like 90 meters away, you're not even within. It's 60 meters. Below 60 meters is the optimal range for these. When you're below 60 meters, snipers aren't really going to be sniping at you. Like, you're probably going to kill the sniper anyway. At least if they have long arm, they're not even like in their optimal environment. So I don't know. It seems to me like they're not going to perform the way that they were intended to perform, I guess you could say. But I think that they do have their place. The shock perk, whatever the heck it's called, literally just shakes your screen like an arc torrent does when you get hit by it. I've had somebody tell me that like it shakes it pretty bad, and like it seems like it's relatively effective, but like it's just like it doesn't hit very hard. It's very, very weak, and each shot is guaranteed to do that. So it's interesting. I like the idea of it, but I'm really hoping for a buff soon. But again, with their own play style, they do have their place alongside missile rack. They won't deal as much damage. Their perk is arguably not very good, but you can shoot one shot, two shots. The RPM is very slow as well, which does kind of suck. But I think overall they have their place. You can be a little bit more careful with your shots. Missile rack, forces you to unload, and then you got like that 10-second reload. I think this has like a base of 5 to 6 seconds reload, so it's a quick reload, and you can choose to only fire a couple shots, as opposed to being forced to unload your entire magazine and then wait for reload. And if you didn't kill the guy, then you're probably screwed. So there's ups and downs. And the 16 version will definitely be comparable to at least Missile Rack 12, I would assume, in terms of damage. Although it would be a significantly higher energy weapon. Wouldn't be a top pick. Obviously, Disc Launcher and Railgun are going to be much better 16 energy weapons. Arguably Stasis Beam as well. Stasis Beam's currently not that great, but this could potentially be a little bit worse. Either way, I do want to get all of them to try them. Maybe not necessarily the 16 one, because I feel like it's not going to work quite so well, but the 12s could be cool. I think there's a lot of potential for the 12s. Anyway, what is the next thing? Arc Torrent 12, that's right. So the Arc Torrent 12, I'm not sure if this is like Photoshopped, something that somebody made up, or if it's like an actual leaked image. I haven't gotten confirmation of one or the other. But if it is a real thing, I don't like it. It's not necessary. The Arc Torrent 10 is already something that players choose over 12 energy weapons, even if they have like a maxed out medium mech. I see maxed out stalkers running, dual arc 10s because they just deal so much damage. And putting out an arc 12 is absolutely unnecessary. Now, if you were to have no implants or something, or reduce the effective implants, like they should do, then that would be a different story. But I think currently, with the current implants that exist and everything like that, it's just going to be, something that's even more crazy than the crazy that we already have in terms of arc torrent. The 6s do pretty well. Like, double 6s do a lot of damage. A lot more damage than a 6 energy weapon should. And I get that they're close range, but, like, dang, man. So yeah, that's going to be definitely the top pick arc torrent in terms of medium mechs. Late game, you're going to see a lot of stalkers running those, and probably Ares too. I've seen probably more Ares with more maxed out Ares with 2 arc 10s than I have with disc launcher or carbines recently. And I think the arc 12s are going to definitely solidify that and just kind of keep the tank meta to basically arc torrents almost exclusively. Disc launcher 12s are usually thrown on like Stalker or something like that, but I don't know. Who knows? I'm honestly hoping that this isn't even a thing that ever makes it to the game because we don't need it. Arc torrent does currently only have 2 variants. In terms of what I would want to see, I don't know. Like, arc torrent 8s, I feel like that would be kind of redundant because currently you can combine like a 10 and an 8, or a 10 and a 6, sorry, to fill 16 energy max, and then like you can put 2 for like 20, and then 2 6s for 12, and there's a lot of versatility in just those 2 energy weapons, 2 energy types anyway. Making like a 4 would be pointless because nobody would use it. Making a 12 is probably their best option if they were going to make another one, but I don't like it. I definitely don't. I don't like that. And I really hope they just keep it as, 2 weapons, or just make an 8. Like, I'd rather see an 8 than a 12, but I can understand why 12 would be their best option. Is there anything else? I mean, the buffs that have been going around to some of these weapons lately. Some people think that the next weapon to be buffed is going to be like Stasis Beam 8, but no, it won't be. What they've been doing is, so far, there's only been 2 buffs, so it's impossible to accurately judge every specific aspect of it. But so far, the 2 weapons that they've buffed have been the highest energy variants of weapons that you can't currently get in the progress path. So, my prediction for the next weapon buff is probably Javelin Rack 8, or potentially, I don't know, I think there's one other one that I thought of, I don't know, but I feel like probably Javelin Rack 8, because the ones that they've buffed didn't necessarily need a giant buff, but they could definitely use it. In terms of long arm, not a lot of people use long arm. Like, they use them exclusively to replace them with Railgun. In terms of shotgun, the only one that's even worth using is Shotgun 8, even before the buff, because Shotgun 2 and 4 immediately get replaced. And I can definitely understand why those are relatively underused weapons, and they want to buff those specific ones so that they get, a little bit more usage out of it, and they're more useful and viable end game. But I would have liked to see like a 10% buff for both of them, and then just make that across the board. 10% buff for all the long arms, 10% buff for all the shotguns. The long arms did need a buff, only the 1 got it, and I think that's unfair. The 8 and the 10 are the ones that need the buff more than the 12. I've used the 12 before the damage increase, and it worked fine. The shotgun I can understand why why it would be considered an underused weapon, but the shotgun didn't need a damage buff at all. I was wrecking people with double shotgun 8s long before that happened. But given those two things that I mentioned, it is pretty fair to assume that Javelin Rack 8 is a possible next weapon buff that they'll be making. But obviously I have no way to confirm that. But I feel like Javelin Rack is a more early game weapon that you can't really use late game. It's not that useful. You don't use a lot of 8 energy weapons late game, and also Javelin Racks are just generally inferior to rocket mortars at this point, so there's no point in even using them half the time. But yeah, they could use it. I wouldn't be mad, because currently Javelin Racks have no real place in endgame meta. So I wouldn't be mad about that. And I'm sure a lot of you use Javelin Racks on a regular basis. So, who knows? That might be a thing. Was there something else? I mean, people are asking like when Archangel is gonna come out, but I have absolutely no idea. It's almost definitely going to be the next pilot that's released, but there's no way of knowing when it's going to be released. I would have assumed it would probably be within, like, inside this last season pass, but it wasn't, so I have no idea. I'm definitely interested to see more legendary pilots, though, because only having one kind of sucks, especially since it's for assault weapons, which also kind of suck. So, I don't know about that. Also, this weird dragon image thing that I've seen people talking about. I saw it recently, but like people are saying that they're hoping like a PvE mode comes out or like some sort of boss fight mode. And I'm just going to say right now, I don't think there's any way that they could implement that which would actually be good. I think this was just an early stage idea that the game had before it decided to go full PvP. Because it's either going to be, it's either going to not give resources or it gives resources. And I know people want this because they think, well, this will be my easy way to get free resources. If it's just a boss battle or like a PvE, then I can get this stuff and I don't have to go against max players. But if it was your source for grinding and, getting a lot of resources for free and relatively easily, that's going to break the economy of the game. And that would mean that they just make everything more expensive. If you can get resources too easily, like easier than they want you to, they're just going to make everything more expensive, and effectively nothing's going to happen. And if it's too hard, if that game mode would be, too difficult, then the only people who would actually be able to play it and actually beat it and get the resources from it would be the paying players who already have maxed out stuff, and that wouldn't be good for anybody either. So I think, all in all, this game mode is never going to exist. I think it was just an early stage idea. I don't think it's ever going to become a thing. And I think even if it was, there's no good way for them to even make it. But anyway, yeah, I think that's all I got. Let me guys know what you think in the comments. Any assumptions that you have, anything that you think might be good or bad, anything that you know about certain things that maybe I didn't cover. But yeah, I will see you guys next time.